Okay, so in this video, we're going to go over how to do a simple API connection in Python. And so just want to kind of go over a little bit what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be using Python and we're going to be using a URL that will then be able to, and through that URL, that will then get translated into a request that will then go to whatever network we're looking at. It'll interface with the API of the network, and then the API will get the data that we want from the database, and then it'll send it, and then it'll send the data that we want to get back to us. So opening up our Google Colab environment, I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to create it, and I'm going to call this file assignment 4. Okay, and so the API we are going to be working with is a very simple API. What it does is it will return different dog photos. So if we go to this website here, dog.ceo, they have an API. And so here is the API. Here is the request that we use. And if we use this API, what it does is it returns back a JSON file. And you can see that file here. And what it does is it'll give us a random picture of a dog. So we can run this and you'll see that we'll get an image of a dog. And so if I keep sending this API request every time, I'll get a new random image of a dog. And I can keep doing this over and over and over again. And so what happens is when we connect here to this page, we'll get this message, and within this message, it has a link to the file. We'll get this JSON file back, and it'll have the file that we want to get. And I can paste this into my web browser, and you see that I get that JSON file. So now we're going to do the same thing in Python. So I am first going to create a new, text header, and I'm going to call this section dog API example. And that's just an easy way for me to keep track of my code. And then I am going to create a second text header, and I'm going to call this random dog. Okay. And then there's a couple libraries we just want to import from the start. Before we get into this, we want to import pandas as PD for data frames. We also want to import requests, which will allow us to connect to the internet. There's an then we want to import JSON, which will allow us to convert text files to dictionaries that we can read in Python. And then finally, we want to enter an image displaying function or library that will allow us to display images. So now that I have those, I'll run that. Okay, now that I have my libraries imported, I'm going to create a new URL. And this is going to be my reference URL that I'll have. And then I want to connect to that URL. So I'm going to use response. And then I am going to call the requests, and I am going to use requests, and I'm going to make a get request, which is telling the API, or it's telling the request function that I'm not trying to give data, but I'm trying to receive data, and then I'm going to ask for the URL. And so if I go ahead and run this, I get a response 200, which a response 200 means that I had a successful connection. If something else besides a response 200 comes up, then you should check your code, or you should not check your code. That means that there was an error that happened with the website and something happened when you're trying to connect to it. And that's something you should look into. But I can then take response, and if I do response.text, this will take the response that I get. Oops. I'm sorry. And so I want to call the JSON library, and then I'll use JSON loads, and then I'll take response. Actually, oh, sorry. Here we go. I misspelled response. So if I do response.text, you can see that I get the exact same type of JSON file that I would have got. And then I can use the JSON library, and I'll take loads, and I'll use loads. And if I run that, what I'll do is I'll turn it into dictionary form for me. So then I can access different elements of this dictionary. Like for instance, I can grab message out of here, and that will get me my URL. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to make it our data. We're going to set that to data, and then I am going to want to get the picture. So I'm going to take pic is going to be equal to message. Now if I run that, you can see that pic is equal to our image that we want to get. And if we take this image, we can display it here, and you see we get the image of a random dog. So then I can, if I want to display this in Python, I can use the image function, and then I'll just say URL is equal to the pic. And then there we go. We get our dog. And then if we rerun this, you'll see that we get another image of a dog. So that is a very simple example of a URL. If we want to, we can go to the documentation, and you can see that we can actually make this a little bit more complicated if we want to. And we can specify the breed of dog that we want to look at. So I'm going to add a new section right here, and I'm going to call this section dog breed. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and enter the code. I'm going to just copy and paste the code that we used up here. But instead, I'm going to add a new variable. I'm going to call this variable breed. And for right now, I'm going to make this variable equal to Dalmatian. And then with this URL, what I am going to do is I am going to split this up, and I am going to add our breed in between these two. And just before we run this, just to show you what that'll look like. So we get a URL that looks like this. And if I, enter that URL, I didn't get anything, so I probably spelled Dalmatian wrong. Oops. Or wait, going back to this. Okay, so I added an S on breeds. There wasn't supposed to be an S there. Let's try that again. Okay. That's still not working. So that part is right. Okay, there we go. I spelled images wrong. There we go. And that returns another JSON file for us. So let's connect to that really quickly. See that we get the same response 200. So that's good. Then we can go up here and copy this exact same function that or this exact same block of code that we had. I'm just going to call this picture 2. That gets us our image. If we look at that, we see that we have an image of a Dalmatian. And just so we don't have to go to our web browser, I am going to put this down here, this block of code here, so we can see our image. And there we go. That's our image of our Dalmatian. And what's nice about setting the code up like this is it makes it really easy that I can go back if I want a different breed of dog. Say like I want to look at a poodle, for instance. I can go ahead and just type in poodle and then run all this. And you'll see that I get an image of a poodle. So at a basic level, that is all an API is. You are hitting a certain web link and requesting information and data from that web link, and then that web link will send you whatever data that you request.